Professor Vandita?
Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Well, we have our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir. You can please start the proceeding.
Sure, sir.
Okay, thank
Very
you.
good afternoon to one and all present here with the blessings of our Honorable Founder President, sir, Dr. Ashok K. Chauhan, Honorable Chancellor, sir, Dr. Atul Chauhan, Honorable Senior Vice President, sir, Shri U. Ramachandran, Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, Dr. Sanjay Kumar, respected Senior Director, sir, Dr. Ashok Kumar Srivastav, and respected Head of the institution, Professor Siddharth Nanda. I, Vandita Hajra, welcome you all to the 5-day online faculty development program on emergent pedagogy and contemporary research methods in travel and tourism, organized by Amity Institute of Travel and Tourism, Amity University, Kolkata. Now, may I request respected HY sir to please welcome Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir. Over to you,
Thank
sir.
Thank you, Professor Vandita. Among us, we are really honored and grateful to have our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, who has numerous publications and research experience and academia industry experience. He has been conferred with the most prestigious presidential award, Vishisht Seva Medal, for his outstanding contribution. He has also been conferred with Bihar Gaurav Samman. These are few of the achievements which I am communicating right now. He is much more and has achieved much more than this. I'm really a small person to express how much he has achieved and how much you have learned from you, sir. I'm really grateful on behalf of all the participants that we have an eminent guest speaker as well along with us. Without wasting much time, I request you, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, to please address the gathering for today. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Professor Siddharth Nanda ji. Thanks, Professor Vandita ji, and all the brilliant faculty members. I, on behalf of the entire fraternity of the university, extend a very warm welcome to the distinguished speakers. I am also grateful to the students, grateful to the research scholars who have been the part of this faculty development program. Always it's a delight for me to be part of the whole seminar, workshops, symposiums, consortiums, and the programs like faculty development. The tourism is one subject where I always look at this. There is a scope, and even beyond that scope that exists in a scope. So it has gotten a tremendous and enormous scope. Rightly chosen, the emerging pedagogy and contemporary research methods in travel and tourism is the topic for the day. And for next 5 days, I'm sure you are going to deliberate much more than what I am going to talk about the subject. I will just touch upon a couple of very, very important aspects which will bring forth the impetus where the government is trying to put. As all of us, we are aware that in ancient history, if there is a country that exists that gives the due importance to the tourist, the due importance to the people who come from different places, from the different country, is a country called India. Hindustan, Bharat, एक वैसा भारत जिसके अंदर में वो ऊर्जा है, वो एक रिच ट्रेडिशन और कल्चर है जिसकी मौलिकता को कोई चुनौती नहीं दे सकता है. No one can challenge the history, the rich history and the culture of this country, because the country has not been only advancing in the area of the science and technology, also equally advancing in terms of the tourism development. The travel and tourism is one of the most finest ministry, which is creating a history now. The India has been the Vishwaguru, and it will remain like this, not because of we have so much of the diverse backgrounds, the diverse cultures. It is because of the university like Nalanda, Takshashila, and Vikramshila have been existing, and this has been the hub center for all the tourists coming from different walks of the life. Could be they are the business people, they are the academicians, they are the researchers, they are the tourists, they are the inventors, they are the discoverers. There could be anyone. There could be Rishi, Manishi, Tapasvi, Chintak, Mahachintak, Darshanik, anyone for that matter. यह देश जो है ऋषियों का देश रहा है, मनीषियों का देश रहा है, तपस्वियों का देश रहा है. A country where Swami Vivekananda, like him, a Mahapurush, a Vibhuti, who was born, who could mesmerize by just traveling and touring across the world. In one of the sessions, his talent was so much shown that in a day he became the big individual. He became the celebrity of the world. He became the spiritual guru. That is the power of India, and that is the power of travel and tourism. Why the travel and tourism? Why the emerging pedagogy is required? Because without travel and tourism, the country cannot grow. And where we are looking at this, the growth in every field, growth in traditions, growth in culture, growth in economics, growth in social, growth in political structure, growth in everything. So this is where I am looking at this. When the people, they go to each other, the learning becomes much more. And this is where the travel and tourism comes. When you host an individual, taking a small little example in our houses also, if there are certain guests, if you hug a guest with open arms, definitely you gain a lot of energy. So it means Atithi Devo Bhava. I am Nijah Paro Veti Gadana Laguchet Sam, Udar Charitantum Vasudeva Kutumbakam. हिंदुस्तान जैसी सारा जमीन पर बैठे हुए हम सब लोग, सब भारतीयों का सिर्फ और सिर्फ एक ही द गोल्डन हिस्ट्री रहा है. और वो गोल्डन हिस्ट्री क्या है कि अतिथि मेरे लिए देव के समान है. वी वर्शिप ऑल काइंड ऑफ अ गेस्ट लाइक देव, like a god and goddess. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, the travel and tourism is the largest, probably the service industry in India, the largest. It provides heritage, cultural, medical, business, and sports tourism. The tourism is not only limited to these particular areas. The heritage, culture, medical, business, sports, science, technology, you name a thing, art, fashion, design, animations, everywhere the tourism can take place. The environment, the main objective of this sector is to develop and promote tourism, maintain competitiveness of India as a tourist destination, and improve and expand the existing tourism products to ensure employment generation and economic growth. The tourism plays a very, very important role in generating the economic growth. In this section, we provide, wherever we are talking the travel and tourism, we provide information about various tourist destinations. So it is incumbent upon us that India's every little destination should be described well, should be documented well, and every destination should be marked well. The modes of the travel should be so good that every guest who is getting into the country, he should be delighted to go. Even our own Indians, own fellow citizens from the different states, they should be traveling from one side to the other side. So modes of the travel have got to be really made so good. And today, India is flourishing. As you are aware about this, hundreds of the kilometers each day we are building up. Every nook and corner of this country is being connected with the waterways, information ways, roadways, and the airways. In this country, now the government focus is to create the waterways. We had this airways, we had the roadways, but now every little thing is being strengthened. So accommodation, we have got to put it as in a world class. Tourism in India is important for the country's economy. As I told you, the World Travel and Tourism Council calculated that the tourism generated, this is a government data, rupees 16.91 lakh crore. That amounts to US $200 billion, the $1 billion. In other words, is 9.2% of the India's GDP in 2018. This is the data of the 2018. 9.2% of the India's GDP in 2018 and supported 42.673 million jobs. Now look at this, 8.1% of its total employment. Travel and tourism sector alone, it contributes so heavily onto this. This is where the importance of the travel and tourism comes. When we are looking at the developing the different kind of a contemporary pedagogy, it means that the finest part of the travel and tourism should be part of our curriculum. We must look at this, the norms of the Industry 4, and now we are looking at to carve the Industry 4 norm and Industry 5 norms. So this is where the whole contemporary part of the travel and tourism should be part of our course curriculum. The sector is predicted to grow at an annual rate of 6.9% to 32 lakh crore, again the $400 billion by 2028. That will be amounting to the 9.9% of the GDP. One particular sector, if आप 10% GDP के भागीदार होते हैं, आप अपना importance खुद समझ सकते हैं. You can understand your own importance. My dear all faculty members and the researchers and the all participants, you have got to listen to my all this data, because these data are all being revealed by the government, the Ministry of Travel and Tourism. It means in true sense, we have got to develop the department in such a fashion where many all aspiring students come to the university, they take admissions, and right from the day of the induction, you give the flavor of the research. I am the great advocate of the research, because unless this seed is being grown in the fertile minds of the Indian youths, the country will never become the self-reliant. The ultimate aim and the vision of this university, in line with the vision of the founder presidents, is build the nation through education and beyond. Now this is where we are looking at. When it comes to the education and beyond is what? Beyond is basically, it is not only the theoretical studies, the skill-based teaching, the experimental-based teaching, case studies, so that in true sense, the students should be in a position to really appreciate what the teachers they talk about. Over 17.9 million foreign tourists, they arrived in India somewhere in 2019, compared to 17.4 million in 2018. Look at this kind of a growth rate, representing a growth rate of 3.5%. This makes the India the 22nd most visited nation. Now, if we are at the level of the 22nd most visited nation, why can't we look at this, that we should become the top 10? This is where the whole world is looking at us, that in years to come, in just a decade time, our target should be that India should be one of the topmost tourist destination for the tourists across the world. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if I can give you little data, why I'm trying to put this data for you all, because this will definitely bind your attention. There are many things we have got to research. There are many things we have got to develop. Only don't restrict yourself for the graduations. You have got to go beyond that. Go for the research, PhD scholars. Let the scholars to flock in the department and get many data. Let them walk. Let them come out with all kind of innovative methods. And we should become the advisor to the government. We should become the advisor to the Ministry of the Tourism and Travel and Tourism. We should be looking at this, how a tourist place can be made so attractive, how it can be made so charming. If you look at this foreign tourist arrivals in India from different regions during 2016 and 18, South Asia is at the highest. The lowest comes with the Central and South, and then Africa. We have got to look at this, how if the South Asia can attract so many of them, if the Western Europe can attract so many of them, then why not other even continents? So I am looking at this from all continents. The development should be such that the people should get automatically attracted. And a definite significant contribution on the dynamic leadership of the Professor Siddharth ji and the brilliant teachers. I'm looking at this that with every passing day, the department will grow and it will reach to the greater heights. So far, the tourism, you are aware about this. The domestic tourism, we have got to now look at this. Inbound tourism, we have got to look at this. Outbound tourism, we have got to look at this. Tourism industry has got to, reach to the different level. It has got to reach to different level. So you have all kind of collaborations, MOUs, and so far all kind of your research activities are concerned. We are highly research driven university. If you give me the time, I can talk hours together on the research methodology, the research processes. But I am sure there are a lot many distinguished speakers who are in line. I am fond of teaching, I am fond of talking and giving such kind of lectures, but without taking much of your time, that I will only lay emphasis onto this, that please go through the website of the Ministry of Travel and Tourism. See to this, that what are the different scopes, what are the different kind of schemes. Even there are lot many schemes. Couple of them I would like to name it. Swadesh Darshan scheme, very important scheme floated by the government, and it is not that latest. It was floated somewhere in 2014 and 15. And what it says about this, basically it is all about the development of the culture. The government of India for the integrated development of theme-based tourist circuits. So try to look at this. Your PhD scholars, your students at the graduation level itself, now you should be part of the designing the tourist circuits. The tourism is all about circuiting the matter, the way the electrons move all around the orbits through the nucleus. In the similar fashion, you have got to ensure that you develop brilliant tourist circuits on which all travelers, they go all around, round and round and round and throughout the year. The scheme aims to promote, develop and harness the potential of tourism in India. So such schemes are plenty. There's another scheme called Prasad scheme. The full form of the Prasad scheme is pilgrimage, rejuvenation and spiritual augmentation. Now look at this. Now India is looking at this, that we should become the religious and a spiritual guru. And so, let's say Sarnath, it is in Varanasi. Now if you look at this, how the government is emphasizing on every little thing. The greatest corridor being developed as in Kashi Vishwanath Mandir, Vaidyanath Mandir. So when we are saying Om Namah Shivaya, then we are saying Om Someshwaraya Namah, Om Rameshwaraya Namah, Om Venkateswaraya Namah, Om Mahakaleshwaraya Namah. Now, if you look at this, all Jyotirling, 11 Jyotirlings, the circuits are being, going to be prepared very, very soon. All these places of the great importance, even different kind of forts all around. In every state, there is a huge potential. Go through the Archaeological Survey of India. All buildings, the heritage buildings, which has been identified by the world, that has got to be developed as a tourist place. And what kind of a contribution my faculty members, my PhD scholars, and the students can do is enormous. The potential is unlimited. I am sure that my brilliant students, my most vibrant students are going to contribute very, very significantly. So far I am concerned, each and everything will be given on your platter. Please develop all your academics, showcase your talents, showcase your potential, unleash your energy. And what energy you have is unlimited energy. Unlimited energy. I am sure one day the radiance will show that what kind of worth the department is having. Okay, Siddharth name has come out from the Buddha, and I'm looking at this. I have put one Buddha's, statue, small little, behind my chair. So each day I am looking at this peace, a peaceful destination for the tourists. The most attractive and most charming destination should be India. Well, ladies and gentlemen, with this kind of advocacy, I'm coming to an end, halting myself because I have got to address a couple of more. This is my 10th, 11th, I believe. This 11th FDP
Yes, sir.
since morning. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Once again, I am very thankful to all the distinguished speakers and scholars, those who have joined from across the country. Thank you all. God bless. Stay safe. Jai Hind. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. We are aware that we have continuously so many FDPs today, yet we took out a time to address. And to be happy to know, along with our esteemed speaker, we also have participants across all over the country, including India. So we have, very grateful to you, to all the participants as well. Thank you so much, sir, for addressing all of us today. Thank you, sir. Now I would
Thanks
like
all.
to request Professor Vandita to please introduce our eminent guest speaker for today.
Thank you so much, sir. Today, we are immensely honored to welcome Dr. Kiran Shinde as a resource person for the first day of our event. Dr. Kiran Shinde is the convener of planning program at La Trobe University in Australia. He combines research training of an academic and professional practice of a planner with vast experience in different planning sectors across India, Australia, and Thailand. He has research interests in two broad areas, planning for multiculturalism in regional Australia and tourism development with a special focus on policy analysis and strategic management of destinations. Dr. Kiran has written extensively on topics related to religious and cultural heritage and tourism, urban planning, destination management, etc., and published more than 50 research articles. Recently, he co-edited a book titled Religious Tourism and the Environment, published by CABI. He was lead author, editor-in-chief, and author of South Asia monographs for UNWTO, project titled Buddhist Tourism in Asia Towards Sustainable Development that covered Buddhist heritage and tourism in 16 countries. He has delivered talks at conferences in Canada, Turkey, Australia, Portugal, Singapore, the UK, and US. He was awarded the coveted Asian Townscape Award in 2017 by UN Habitat for his project on revitalization of a heritage bridge in Pune, India. His work experience ranges across multi-sectoral areas with international organizations, including UNEP and Asian Disaster Preparedness Center. He is also the founder of Pune Biennial Foundation, a not-for-profit organization working in the field of urban aesthetics in India. We welcome you, sir, and you may kindly proceed with your session.
Thank you so much, sir. I would like to just welcome you once again. I'm really, it's an important topic for me as well, because research is extremely important for not only for all the faculty member participants, but also for our team. I'm really honored to have you again, sir, for today's session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Siddharth. Thank you, Vandita. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Yes, you're audible, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Without further ado, I think I will straight away get to the presentation. Are you all able to see this slide?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Good.
Yes.
Thank you very much. So, as I already mentioned, I think Honorable Vice Chancellor sir has already given a lot of background on why people should be interested in research and on tourism, particularly how we are moving forward in this new era of tourism. So thank you once again, Siddharth and Vandita, to invite me. I just thought probably I'll put a little bit of context to for all the participants. It's not because probably Vandita knows me or Siddharth knows me. This is my first interaction, but I think what is important for us as scholars in tourism and practitioners is that our work speaks for ourselves. So probably all the things that you've heard from Vandita, I thought I'll just put a little bit of a graphic to it. So you know that probably you're brought to FDP where there will be reasonably qualified people to talk to you. So you're not being held ransom to anyone, just like that. So that's just a little bit of a context of the kind of work that I've done, but this has come over a number of years. So this FDP probably is, at least my session is going to be a little different compared to probably some of the FDPs that many of you would have gone through, because I started from a bottoms up approach. In this one, I actually asked Vandita when I was invited to give a session. I said, what would you like the session on? Because often what happens is we have a lot to say and a lot to share, but people who want to do FDP would like to do it because of certain reasons. And therefore, we started with this idea of give me a few questions and I can start working onto it. So thankfully, Vandita and her team at the institution came up with these number of questions that you have. And I think generally most scholars, whatever level of their career they are, they would keep having these kind of questions. So I've tried to club them in three broad parts, and I will go through these three broad parts in my presentation. Probably you will find answers to these questions in the way that I have articulated. Please do let me know if you can't hear for any reason. Use the chat window or something. Yeah. Okay. Now, this is one thing. I'm just putting graphic to all the things that Honorable Vice Chancellor Sir said, that tourism is such a vast field that you could probably think about a zillion ways to do research in tourism. So the first question people ask is, what should I research on? Where do I start? I think the best way from my perspective is if you look at Leaper's model, Neil Leaper's model of tourism as a system, you'll find that there is a generating region and there is a destination, and it's in between where a lot of transportation kind of stuff happen. You can literally pick any part of this system and start researching on whichever part you are more comfortable with. So I know people who are very good with statistics. So they are constantly talking about visitor satisfaction and doing statistical data analysis for visitor satisfaction. We know some people are pretty good with marketing. So, I had a friend who did a fantastic study on the Incredible India campaign. So it was a good analysis of what the campaign actually did for India. What were the contents of it? How did it work? So there is absolutely no dearth of, sorry, what has just happened? Yeah, there is absolutely no dearth of research topics. And where to start? I think it depends a lot on whenever you are ready. When probably you have done some kind of work that you feel has put you in a position where you were not earlier. So you've got to know a little more about, let's say, hospitality. I know in India, most of the times we focus a lot on hospitality, but not tourism as a system. We talk about a lot of other things, but not necessarily tourism. So even if you're interested in hospitality, there are things like, I'll just give an example. I came across a paper that I reviewed, which talked about how does religion influence, or religious faith influence people who work in hospitality sector. So this is nothing about tourist. This is nothing about the place itself. It is about how large conglomerates actually integrate religious and spiritual values in their sense of hospitality. So it's a very different area. So don't feel constrained by anything. Literally, you can work on any part and start your research, but whenever you're ready. So that's the first question that I've answered. So tick mark on that, Siddharth and Vandita, please. Now, what is research? I think it's a very simple way to put it. It's construction of new knowledge, research. So we are searching again for some new meanings. As probably the Vice Chancellor sir said, we've been having tourism in India for centuries and ages and civilizations. So probably most of the questions that somebody's asking, you would know them inherently. But the fact is, how do you reflect on something? How do you interpret that? And then what are the explanations that you have for that phenomena? That is where we construct new knowledges. So research is primarily constructing new knowledge, but using these three fundamental processes. Now, often people say there is research gap, and I'm sure your faculty members would understand this word. And the newbies in PhD doing PhDs and masters would say, oh, research gap, research. Honestly, to me, there is nothing called a research gap because there's no gap in research. Somebody has looked at the concept from their perspective. So for example, if you just look at like the tour operators, somebody would have done tour operators or tour guides in Taj Mahal, but that does not necessarily mean the same way tour guide will behave in another location, maybe the State Library of Victoria, State Library in Kolkata. That's a different product altogether. So there's no gap as such. Also, they did not do the research for you. When you look at research papers and things like that, they didn't do it for you. They did it for themselves. So somebody came from tourism studies, somebody came from geography, somebody came from anthropology. So they are looking at the same problem from their perspective. So when people say, oh, that fellow did not do this, or this scholar has not looked at it, this, my question to them is, well, did they actually wait for you to tell them? No, they didn't. They were doing it because they had certain kind of concepts to work with. They had certain places to work with. Similarly, as a researcher, you work around many different things, such as you employ a different perspective rather than what has already been said. You may use a different context. You may highlight a different point or argument, or you can completely create a new direction. So, for example, in my own case, I've been working a lot in religious and cultural tourism, but that 20 years ago, there are not many people talking about it. They're talking about leisure-based tourism. So I've kind of created a new pathway altogether. So there is no gap as such. There is people are occupied with many different kinds of ideas, and they're going to pursue those ideas. They're not for you, right? So now you've figured out that tourism is a very vast field and you can practically do research on any aspect. Then you probably what I've just mentioned very briefly is what is research and what is research gap. Now, please be mindful that every single slide that I'm presenting today is a workshop on itself. So each of these slides can be converted in a full day workshop. So please be mindful that this is a very abridged version of what we do. So how do you prepare research proposal? I'm sure your research teachers, research lecturers will talk about this in much greater depth than what I can cover. So essentially, you need to first ask a question to yourself. What am I researching on? What is my focus? What kind of questions are being generated and where are they situated? Are they about the destination? Are they about the origin? Are they about the transport choices? Are they about people? Are they about processes? Are they about hotels? Are they about guest house? So you need to have a research question before you start making a proposal, because that question is going to lead to the framing of objectives. What is objectives? It's basically breaking down of your research questions into manageable pieces. So you say, this is my objective number 1, my objective number 2, and this is how I'm going to achieve it. Once you say these are my objectives, then you need to have a plan, which will at least include a conceptual approach. So what's a conceptual handle? What's a theoretical framework? What's a backing to what you're doing? All of that needs to be worked out, and this is what is typical called research design. And then generally you would come up with what we are saying. What is the information that you need to gather? What is the method that you will use? What are the instruments that you can use? How will this information be organized and analyzed? So you're almost preparing a blueprint or a design before you get onto the field. So you should be including as much of the information that you have before you actually conduct the research. Because once you're in field, it becomes extremely challenging to keep changing. So one of the key things that you will be always asked is, what's the method you're using? And this is where most people do falter, because they might use a certain kind of method to find a certain kind of data. Now, if they use method A, that would lead to kind of 2 or 3 kinds of data. But if you use method B, you might get only one kind of data. So for example, if you're looking at archival research, which is basically historical documentation, somebody wants to look at the history of hotel industry in India, for instance, and they would go through a whole lot of different kinds of archival material. So it could be old reports, it could be government reports, it could be private sector, Federation of Chambers of Commerce, or some of the stuffs. Surveys is very good when you've got large numbers to work with. We're looking at quantitative data. You want to run different kind of models. When you want very rich data, then you are interviewing people. That's qualitative stuff. So every method will give you a different kind of an outcome. So before you actually conduct a research, you need to find out what you need from that research. So for example, if I have to go from Kolkata to Delhi, I need to find a way to go to Delhi. There is no point in buying a ticket to Bangalore and then say, oh, I didn't reach Delhi. Well, you didn't buy a ticket for Delhi. You bought a ticket for Bangalore. So this is where research design, research method comes in. So that's an absolutely fundamental part of doing good research. Now I want to come to the second part of my session, which is ethics. Yeah, you want to do all the research, that's great. But you're not the first person to do research on a certain topic. There are probably hundreds of people who would have done this in the past that you may not be aware of. So therefore, it becomes extremely important to understand this particular aspect, which is called ethics. And unfortunately, we don't talk much about it in the Indian context, because we have a very different way of working around it. So, but fundamentally, it means the distinction between right or wrong. So how do you decide what is right or wrong in research? And that is where we talk about norms for conduct. So there is something called research conduct, what is acceptable behavior and unacceptable behavior. So ethics pertains to method, procedure, perspective, and basically everything in terms of how you want to act about your research. So just to give you some examples, one of the most common instance is when you do a review of literature, when your supervisors or your faculty members ask, or anyone asks you to do a good review of literature. Well, in that you simply say, oh, literature on this is not available, or you don't cite the people who are actually done work in that area, so relevant prior work. You're simply saying that, oh, there is no research on this aspect, but have you done enough background work onto it? Have you searched enough literature? If you have, then you'll definitely come across some or the other idea, because please be mindful again that no idea is just original in the way we think about it. I'm the first person to talk about it. No, 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 no. You're not the first person. There are probably 50, 60 other people who have worked onto it. You're just applying a different way of different lens to work onto that. The other thing that we always see is stretching the truth. Oh, this is what is the generalization bit of it. Oh, people say they're very unhappy with the Swadesh Darshan scheme. How many people did you talk to? Or just about 6 or 7 of my neighbors. Now that's not correct, because that's not a sample that is really telling us much about the universe. So that's stretching the truth. Making unauthorized copies of data, so papers. So for example, if the librarian has said, no, you can't take this data out, and we still take it out without their consent. So this is where informed consent comes into play. And good research record. People say, oh, I did meet this fellow and this is what I've done. Okay, where is the record of it? Has anyone looked at it? Has anyone signed it? Or is simply saying, oh, that was I did this. So some of these very fundamental ways of working. Just to give you the context, and this is a little old data. This is in 2014, and this was Times of India. Almost 4,283 in that year. Those many authors were flagged for cheating, plagiarism. Right? It's very interesting that it's more than almost 10-12%. And this is what Indian Journal of Medical Research said. Plagiarism problem is rampant and all pervasive, and near lack of action underscores the deep rot that has set in. I think this is where your Vice Chancellor is really interested in saying, let's do good research. And I'm pretty happy that Amit has taken this step. In fact, that was my primary reason to say yes to the invitation, that I want to talk about how to do good research. And I think as researchers wanting to do something, you all need to know what is good research. Another quick, very famous case, why plagiarism is a problem. I don't know how many of you would know Farid Zakaria, but he was Times News Network, TNN's main correspondent. And he was with CNN, Indian American. And then he had to lose his job because he copied certain parts of the text from somebody else's work. And if that doesn't ring a bell, probably this will ring a bell to you. This is a very famous musician, Pritam Da. And one would say, oh, he's such an accomplished musician. But this is exactly what he says. I regret it big time. It doesn't allow him to enjoy his success, which is simply because, to his credit, now he's got some of these original songs that were thought to be original were actually not original. He had lifted them from somewhere. Right. So those are kind of big problems from an ethical standpoint. Just to give you a sense of how ethics comes up across in research. So it comes in pre-field work, which is research design, again, where you are developing a research design, where you're not factoring in enough literature support. The methodology is flawed. Data collection, when you know that this data is going to be not enough, but we still go ahead with that. That's pre-field work ethics. On field, so sometimes when you're conducting surveys or interviews, they find this quite relevant at times, that when you're making observations, you're making covert observations or making surveys where you probably distributed 100 questionnaires to a hotel and just one person sits and fills all those surveys and it comes back. And then you say, why is my data not giving me the diversity that I'm looking for? So some of these are all ethical questions. And then when you report of results or discussions, scholars generally put in things that do not emerge or evolve from the field. They're kind of disconnect between what that data is and saying and what they want to say about it. So those are all unethical issues that we see. So one way that this can help you is literature review. So I thought I'll probably throw in that a little bit. So what is literature review? Again, your professors would be much more capable of talking about this in much greater depth. But a literature review is basically, it's your way of understanding and telling people that this is what the main ideas are, what other people have said about this particular topic, and therefore I am going to build onto this in a certain way. So why do we need to do a literature review? So basically, as we said, to build on the platform of existing knowledges and ideas, to identify other people working in the same field. This is very important. Who is the scholarship that you are trying to work with? Increase the breadth of knowledge of your subject area. A scholar is supposed to know a lot more than an ordinary person. That's the whole concept. That's how you're a scholar. That's how you're different. Also, even if you're a practitioner, it doesn't matter. If you don't practice what is said in theory, then you're probably lacking something. Also, very important is who are the pioneers in your area of work. Try to connect with them. Your literature review actually connects with them. I remember when I was doing my PhD many moons ago, I used to write to everybody in that area, and surprisingly enough, there were probably very few, very like handful of people in India who were doing work in that, but most of them were in the US and Europe. And I got to know them through their work and writing to them, and they got to know me. And then whenever they had new books coming up or special issues or journals, they could come reach out to me and say, would you like to contribute something here? So that's how it helps to build your scholarship. So literature review is really good to know what's happening. And then very practically, it helps you to identify methods that can be relevant. Most often, the problem we see with scholars is they have a fantastic research question, but they just don't understand how am I going to get data for this? How am I going to prove something like this? And this is where literature review really helps you a lot. One of the problems that we find with literature review is if it's not done properly, then it leads to what we call plagiarism, or basically in simple terms, copy pasting or cheating. So which is kind of saying to pass off ideas which are not your own, and you're not giving credit to people who have actually talked about it. So that's called plagiarism. So there are ways that you could avoid doing it to make a sound literature review and therefore a good ethical practice is reference material that you should document. So quotations, so definitely things like when you talk about certain ideas, no, there are some people inherently connected to that idea. There's no way that someone else would have used it. So it's always a good idea thinking to credit those people. Information, well, when you opt in a piece of information that isn't common knowledge, then you need to provide source, because where did you get that information from? Who told you this? Or is it a government report? Are you simply saying this is what's happening? So for example, in Kolkata, there are probably 7 5-star hotels. Okay, yes. Did you go and count them, or have you taken it from the source? Because tomorrow, when somebody looks at your piece of work and they refer to that data in their work, they'll say, oh, so and so person said there are 7 5-star hotels in Kolkata, probably that. And somebody would come and say, no, that's not correct. There are 12. Now, where is the source of information? Therefore, if that 7 hotels, 5-star hotels came from a federation of commerce or chamber of commerce or from the local municipality, you need to provide that. Sometimes the ideas, the concepts. So for example, when talk of Marxist theories, there are lots of people who have interpreted in different ways. Now, if you're using Marxist theory, then you need to use that author who has interpreted Marxist theory in a certain way. And sometimes even the common knowledge, like census data, we know that census data, we have got such population, but did you go and count it? No. So probably it's a good idea to put that information. Right? So one of the precautionary principles we say, whenever in doubt, just be cautious and cite the source. That way you're saving yourself the agony of being called as plagiarized. Another way is different. There are different styles in referencing. I'm just mentioning this to you simply because what happens is when you're submitting papers or when you're writing it, if you do not stick to the referencing style, that is also called ethical misconduct. So which basically means you're trying to copy work from somewhere else and just putting things. So this is just one difference between Chicago and Harvard style. You'll see the author names are changed, the way they are put in the reference list is different. One of the quickest way that we figure out when a paper is not done properly is look at the reference list and does it match with our journal paper style. again, just to give you an example of how these are different. So in this, when there is a year, same author, different years, or in the same year, we'll call A and B, whereas in other places we'll do it in a different manner. So the two very important things that we do in literature review, which is really significant. One is called summarizing. So summarizing means trying to get the key ideas into your text in a very simple language. It is not copy of it. So you need to make sure that the meaning is the same. The degree of certainty, as we call it, now what's the key point here? That has to be there. And it's a much shorter version. And we always make use of the reference. So that's what is called a summary. Then there is something called paraphrasing. These are very important tools to avoid plagiarism. So paraphrasing basically means it documents a reference material, uses a certain language, and modifies that. And sometimes you also add a little more to it. So these are just an example. So paraphrasing could actually be longer than the original text you want to use. So these are all different tools and techniques that we use to create. So meaning is same. Most of the words have been changed in different language. Often people copy paste a lot more and that immediately gets picked up as plagiarism. But if you do proper paraphrasing, you can actually avoid getting into trouble. So how do you do paraphrasing? Again, as I mentioned earlier in my talk, each of the topics that I'm talking about today, each slide is a one-day workshop. So don't think that you've got everything today. No, I'm just giving you the universe of research, how we work in. So how do you do paraphrasing? When you read a passage, try to understand it as a whole. If you don't understand some difficult words, find synonyms for them, and then start working into it. Think of what is that if you were to write it in your own words, what would that mean? Revise what you've written and compare it with the original. So if you see more similarities, probably you've not done good paraphrasing. Now, one of the things that we also talked about was, using good references, good scholarly work in your research. Many times people do a Google search and whatever comes up, they just take it. And that's bad practice of research, because if you build on a good quality of article, your research will be stronger. If you work with poor quality of references, poor quality of articles, you would struggle. When the articles are not well respected, you run the risk that what you're saying is probably not proven clearly. So there are ways that you can actually look at a good quality of a journal article. So first is, where is this published? Look for the quality of journals. So there could be things like impact. But there are a lot of cheating also that happens in impact. But one way that we look at is the number of issues and the number of volumes that the journal has. The longer time frame that the journal has been in the field, it means it does have a very fairly good quality. How many times that journal is published, a lot of stuff. So go back to the journal's aims and objectives, and that will give you an idea. Who's the author? Check for the author. What has the author written something similar? What are the research areas? Which institution this author is from? So all these things really matter in picking up. What's the date of publication? I mean, if you're doing research in 2022, there is no point in looking at 1960s references, but I do come across papers that people talk about 1965. Somebody said this. After 1965, the world has moved on quite a lot. So you should have had some more work that has been taken. Oh, but I actually went through the Google only. So sometimes we also see, what do other researchers say about that paper? If it's really a 1960s paper, look for the Google Scholar Citation Index. And based on all of that, we determine the quality of a journal article. So poor quality of research articles, poor quality of paper, as simple as that. So it's like this, if you're trying to make an ingredient, you're cooking a dish. If you do not have good quality ingredients in that dish, how will the final outcome be a great dish? Impossible, right? If you don't get good quality fish, how will you do what is called the masar jol or something, the Bengali dish? If you can't, or rasgulla, if you can't use the good quality ingredients, you cannot come out with a good quality paper, as simple as that, right? Now, I'm coming to the third part of my talk, which is how to publish and where to publish. Now, publishing research, you can literally publish your research in many, many places. It's just not one thing called journal article. So this is what I've just worked out over the number of years that often you start with something like this, like a conference presentation, but this is an FDP, so not a conference, but you go to a conference of a similar kind of work. If you're in tourism, I mean, there's no point in sending your paper to a journal on science and material and technology, because that is how most of the conferences in India are presented nowadays. So some department of metallurgical engineering is creating some journal paper on, you put a conference paper there. That's not really worth it. Put in a paper or a presentation to the conference that aligns with your research. That's very important. Based on that, you get good feedback from the top, because if you go to a tourism conference, guess what's going to happen? Tourism scholars you're going to meet. You go to an engineering conference or a metallurgical conference, who are you going to meet? Tourism scholars? No. So what kind of feedback can they give you? Nothing. So if you really want to build a good scholarly career, you need to be in the same field for some time. Build onto it, and then start thinking about how do I publish? Maybe it could be a good report. It could be a working paper from the institution itself. It could be a book chapter. And then as you go higher up, the level of rigor changes dramatically. So you can have a book chapter, you can have a journal article, you can do an edited book, a monograph, all of that. And nowadays we also have the parallel media, which is newspaper, web pages, blogs, podcasts. So there are several avenues that you can have, but each avenue, remember, has its own convention to follow. When you write a conference paper, that doesn't automatically become a book chapter. It doesn't automatically become something else. It has to follow its own convention, right? So when should you publish? Well, whenever you're ready with something worthwhile to say, and I'll show you a few examples of how that's done. So this is my first article that I published in 2003. It was in a journal called a magazine, actually, Hinduism Today. But this was because somebody was making a story and I had something very important to say. For the first time, people were actually talking about environmental issues. And then my first journal paper came 4 years later based on this experience. So I was ready with something that had value, and therefore the journal was willing to accept that. Sometimes it could be just an idea. So this was a conference call from National Institute of Singapore, which was talking about resilience of natural heritage in Asian cities. Then I submitted an abstract, so that you can see that abstract, which was then accepted. And after all of that, it was then I converted that abstract and presentation using the feedback from all the people in that conference into a journal paper. And you can see that it was initially submitted in 2015 September, and then it was accepted in May 2016. The conference took place in November 2014. So there is a process, there is a time, there is maturity of ideas that needs to happen. If you simply say, I'm going to publish in 2 months' time, that's not going to happen. You're publishing in a very wrong place. So you need to have a very clear purpose of your research, right? when you have reasonable evidence, you could also write reports. So this is a report that UNWTO was preparing, and they said, Dr. Shinde, can you write something on domestic tourism in Asia? And I said, yeah, I've been researching onto it. Of course, it was not my major area of work. I was working on tourism and environment stuff, but yes, I can do it. So I expanded my research universe. I looked at other ideas and I found some reasonable evidence, and therefore I thought it is a great idea to share. Sometimes it's simply newspapers. So this was a presentation I made at one of the local institutions, and that was a newspaper was reported. So we don't discount them. They were asking some really nice thought-provoking question, and your research can actually generate some of these stuffs. Right? So this is just to give you an idea. What do you publish? Well, if you do a good research project, you could publish so many aspects of it in different places. So this is just an example. This is not about boasting myself on my work, but I'm just giving you an idea. Just from my PhD work, one project, I've published about 10, 11 journal papers and about 11 book chapters, so close to about 20, 22, based on one solid piece of research, but different directions. So if you can see the kind of journals that you work in different areas. So current issues in tourism, I talked about earlier. In event management, I looked at Hindu festivals as a separate festival. In Journal of Tourism Research, looked at entrepreneurship. In tourism planning and development, looked at trusts, uh, communitas, policy research. So there are so many things that you can work around. Where do you publish and how do you decide where to publish? So this is kind of, most people want to do this. This is their ultimate goal, as I see most of the times. So don't randomly submit it to a journal. Think about a journal. In fact, creating a journal paper itself is a process. Identifying a journal is a process. You need to spend good 2-3 weeks and understanding which journal aligns best with your paper, and then see. First is scientific rigor. What kind of processes it has? What kind of editors does it have? Is it predatory or not? Does it have a section on ethics? Who are the editorial board members? Do they come from respected institutions? Have they themselves published enough? What are the kind of impact factor scores? What are the indexing? Is it indexed in a variety of places so that your article gets much more visibility? So there are several criteria that you need to evaluate before you actually submit something. Before even publishing research article, you need to think about abstracts. Why? Why is abstract important? Because it really helps you to clarify your own story of research. It tells you that in this paper, in this 6,000, 7,000 words, which is just about 15, 20 pages, I'm going to say this story. This cannot be all of your project. It could be one part of your project, because in 6,000 words, it's very hard to do it. So it helps you to then say, this is the story I want to tell, one, but it also tells your readers to decide whether they want to continue or not. And then very important, it gives you more visibility. Right. So for example, this particular paper, which is published in Journal of Policy Research in Tourism, was translated in 4 different languages. And that means it reaches out to a whole range of different background people, and they can then start looking at your work. So abstracts do matter. They basically are crystallization of your research. So spend some time writing good abstracts. How do you do that? Well, think about this as at least 7 to 8 sentences. Each sentence says something. So typically abstracts are between 200 to 300 words, and there are many different kinds of abstracts. There's no time to go on all of that, but this is where it should give the context of your research. It should tell you the research problem that that your research paper is solving, the methods that you have used, the results or the findings, and then the practical implications. And if it's a conceptual paper or a review paper, then theoretical implications. Before you write an abstract, choose a category for the paper that you want to write. You want to write a conceptual paper, it will have to have lots of theoretical understanding. Whether it's a case study paper, it's going to be different. So one way to do that is you read a lots of abstract. In a way, you start actually hearing them in yourself. So once you read a lot of abstracts, then you know what is important in there. So you draft and redraft, because in abstracts, every word counts. You have to be very clear in your abstract. If you use too much of jargon in your abstract, nobody's going to read your paper. And sometimes it's a good idea to just seek feedback from someone else. Keywords, of course, they also matter like an abstract because they affect the searchability. So if you see, if you use similar kind of keywords, they really help to establish what your areas of work is. That's how when Vandita was introducing me, she said, I've worked in cultural heritage, religious tourism, and these are the words that will keep coming up on my papers most of the times. That's how you build a track record. How do you write a good abstract? It's one well-developed paragraph that is coherent. So one sentence leads to the other sentence. Generally, we don't include things that we are not going to cover in the news in the following paper. Often it is used in passive, it's written in a passive language. Right. And very simplified language, no jargon, absolutely no jargon. So in the last 45 minutes, what I've tried to do is I've tried to answer as many questions as possible that were asked to me. And then that's where I'm going to stop. This is just a list of references that I've used in my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. And I can see that people are still coming in. I mean, that's all right. That's not my problem. Anyways.
So the first thing, I hope I'm audible.
Yep.
So the first thing I would mention is that you have provided everyone with a very, very refreshing way to approach the entire process of research as a whole. And in a very precise manner, you have explained how tourism is a very vast field by referring to something very basic, that's the Leapers model, and how research can be done on practically any aspect. Now, I should tell this that my team and I are very grateful to you for actually, asking for the questions on which you have based this very informative and engaging presentation. We literally sat down and we had this brainstorming session regarding what are the roadblocks we ourselves have faced at some point or the other during our respective research journeys, things we were not at all aware of. And we are so very thankful to you for suggesting this particular approach, because today all the participants have been lucky enough to have this experience of attending almost a PhD coursework in a nutshell. And being able to listen to somebody like you is itself an honor. And there are things which you have talked about so lucidly, things that people learn in a trial and error method over years, like something as simple as how to write a good abstract. So, sir, we thank you for this. And now we shall move on to the question and answer round. So I would request Dr. Ananda Mitra and Professor Shankar Kumar Mukherjee to kindly moderate the question and answer session. So the participants who are able to access the chat box, you may please post your questions there. You may also post your questions on the WhatsApp group that we have created. We have already given you the access, and the moderators would be conveying the same to our respective resource person. Over to you, Dr. Mitra and Professor Mukherjee.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Sir, you have, as rightly said by Vandita, ma'am, like you have almost taken us through a miniature coursework of PhD. And we are so thankful to you for this immense plethora of knowledge that you have shared with us. Um, Dear participants, we will be looking forward for your questions so that any queries.
Participants, you may please use the react button to the reaction button to raise your hand. We will be able to unmute you then and you can ask your question.
Sir, I personally wanted to ask you one question. That is, sir, as we were guiding us about how to choose a good journal, now as we know that nowadays that there are a lot of journals which are like not the actual ones. They are not. They are like the fake ones. So how do we save ourselves from choosing the right kind of journals?
Okay. All right. I'm just trying to think. What do I have here? Yeah. Well, I keep getting them every second, third day. So if I just go to my email, it'll just be flooded with. The first thing you need to think about is what is your own research productivity, right? Now, if you've produced, let's say 15, 20 really good articles, then why would a journal like that will approach you? A journal of higher caliber should approach you. Very simple. Unless I get a very clear message in saying, dear Dr. Kiran Shinde, we are this, I don't even open that email. So the first way to look at is it from my field? That's the first thing. I get invitations. Oh, welcome to, we would like you to be a keynote speaker for this conference on metallurgy. That's not my area. I'm a tourism scholar. I'm a planner. So unless it's in my area, I'm not even looking at it. That's the first thing, right? The second thing that you need to look into is just Google the name of the journal and see whether it's from the standard publishers that we talk about generally, Elsevier, T&F, Taylor and Francis, uh, Lexington. There's a channel view that there's a whole range of people that work. And if it has got volume 1 or 2 or 3, that's not the journal that you want to put in your work with. Because it's just somebody in their outhouse, and I've known people who have got offices in Daryaganj, New Delhi. Some journals have got offices in Daryaganj, New Delhi. So, uh, that's the second way to look at is go and Google that journal, how many issues they have published, and in every issue, how many papers. Sometimes what happens is online journals, because there is no print version, you can just publish as many as you can. Now, if a reviewer or an editor, any good journal will not carry more than 10 to 12, probably maximum 14 papers. Because as editors, we have the job to look at those 12 papers together and think about it. So they are a part of the issue. Generally, that's what happens. Look at the review process. When they say the review is within 2 weeks time, that's not the journal. Nobody's reviewing that paper. So generally, if you paid close attention to what I was saying, every single paper in a good journal would take you anywhere between 4 to 6 months. So anybody who promises less than 2 months review is not doing their job. So the whole idea of publishing is actually also improving your own self, no? So that you can hire the other thing. It's not just rubber stamping publications. That's not, I mean, that at least not for me, but I know lots of people in India are very happy doing any kind of publication. Or kahin bhi chal jata hai. That's not what we are looking for. We're looking for research excellence. If you want to do research excellence, there is a certain process. So that's a third thing. How do you look at the journal? And I've already mentioned editorial board. Look at the editorial board. Is it coming from your field? Have you at least referred to some papers? Do those names mean anything to you? Because if that doesn't mean ring a bell to you, that means you've not looked at that work at all. So your research is not in alignment with the idea of the themes of that journal. The fourth thing that you should look at is the themes. A good journal will always have aims and objectives, and they are structured around things. So for example, tourism geographies has got a certain focus. Current issues in tourism has a certain focus. Asia Pacific tourism has got a certain focus, right? Tourism hospitality. So there is Journal of Tourism Hospitality. That's different than hospitality management. They're two different things. Now, most likely what will happen is you try to submit your paper to a journal which is not in alignment, it's going to get knocked back. And then you keep scratching your head. Why did it happen? So there are too many journals coming around. The first thing you look at is what is the history of the journal? What is the track record? Who's the editorial board? And whether it has got space for your kind of research or not. So one of the things that I look at is I do a little quick search in the journal itself, not in Google, in the journal itself. I said, where are the papers on? Are there papers on cultural heritage in India? Are there papers on religious tourism in India? Are there papers so that the journal understands that this is an area of work? So you establish a territory with that journal. So it is reasonable amount of work. If you think it takes about 6 months to write a paper, 1 month goes in just trying to identify which is a good journal. Okay, we can go on about every question again. I'm saying will be a full day workshop. So in the interest of what everybody, yeah.
Someone is asking how to check the impact factors for tourism journals. Impact factors.
Every journal will have an impact factor written onto it. So whichever journal you're talking about, I can show you. Share screen. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, it's coming.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Annals of Tourism Research. Of course, this is the topmost journal in the world on tourism. The impact factor of the journal is 12.853, ranking it 1 out of 148 in sociology. With this journal indexed in 24 international databases, your publisher can be read and cited. Look at this. Every journal will have all this data. Any journal that does not have this is not the journal you should be looking for. Simple. Does that make sense?
Right, sir.
Absolutely.
Sir, we have a next question. Someone is asking, writing a research paper, should we send it simultaneously to 10-15 journals at a time?
This is not looking for a groom for a girl, man. Because most of the time, if you are looking at, for example, it happens like this. If you're an established scholar, you will know the fraternity, as we call it. So not boasting again, but I have a reasonably good track record. So anywhere in the world, for any journal, if there is something that comes in religious tourism in India, that paper will come to me for a first thing. And if two journal papers sent to same paper to me, I'm going to say this is being submitted to two papers. And a lot of people like us will be on multiple journals, editorial board, or reviewer boards at least. So we will quickly know that this paper is submitted in two places. That's the first thing. Second thing, probably you may not be aware of in India, and nobody likes to use plagiarism check hardware softwares, but most journals and reviewers would use that. So if your paper is lying somewhere in the virtual world, it'll immediately flag there is 100% plagiarism rate because it's sitting in two different databases at the time of the review. So worst practice to send it to 4 different places, not even 4. Don't even send it to 2, 1 at a time.
Yes,
right?
sir.
1 at a time. What happens is, and this is what will be good thing, aim for the bigger, better ranking. You know that it will get knocked back, but they will at least make an effort to review it and give you feedback, and then you send it to the next one. I have done that at least for 2 or 3 of my papers. I sent the first one. I said, no, now I'm established. I want to really do it. So I sent it to Annals of Tourism Research. Then knocked back after 6 months saying, sorry, we can't take this. But they gave me feedback. I used that and sent it to Tourism Geography, which is number 3 in the ranking. So I was enriched by that feedback. But if you send it in simultaneously to 2 places, you are almost ruining your chances of getting published ever, because the journals will immediately know that this is you're too eager and you don't have much substance into it.
Right, sir. Right, sir.
That's okay. I'm talking only about good journalism. I'm not talking about all the nonsense that goes on.
Right, sir. So, sir, the next question that we have is, how can we increase the chance of acceptance from a prestigious journal as a beginner?
Okay, for this, I generally have a very good question, good example, right? You're a cricketer. I hope at least in India, lots of people, even if it doesn't matter, gender doesn't matter, people are interested in cricket, right? Now, you can keep sitting on the fence and say, once I go into the ground, I'm going to hit a sixer. Chakka marega direct jaake. But if you've not seen the ground, chakka marega kaise? You cannot hit a 6 because you don't know the boundary. So start making 1s and 2s and 3s and run, get some confidence. Then you try to hit a 6 now. Right now, in at least I think the last one that we had on Trinet was something like close to about 1100 or 1200 journals just on tourism, just on tourism. If you try to aim for the top one, people who have been in the field for 20, 30, 40 years, they're still not getting there. What may gives you the confidence that your first paper will become like that? Nobody's going to accept it. No, for that, you should have done reasonably good review of literature. The first thing a good journal looks for is, are you aware of the literature that's published on that field, in that field? If you are able to cite all the literature, then someone else will actually look at your case example or things like that. Because if you don't know the literature around it, and in the first year, it's just impossible. Everybody goes through that process. See, research is a process. One thing that we say is your master's or PhD is only a passport to a research career. That is your first step. Baby food. Baby food खाना है. अब जब baby food नहीं खाने को आता है, तो how are you going to eat the whole fish with a bone into it? It's impossible. No? You're going to hurt yourself. So understand the process first. Understand the territory that you're working in, and then aim for wherever you want to aim. Otherwise, you'll get depressed, nothing else. First of all, if you look at that journal paper, the first thing is, acha, what is the other, this paper? Yeah, this is good. But what is the reference list of this paper? Before reviewing any paper, what we do is look at the reference list. If it doesn't have reasonably good papers from either Annals of Tourism or Tourism Geography or Tourism Management, the big ones, we're not even going to look at it. So to be able to understand the research terrain, research ground, it takes a long time. Now you can sit onto it for 20 years and say, I'm going to write the best paper in the world. Yes, but in 20 years, the world has moved on. Your research is no more relevant. So
Right.
Might as well start writing small, right? B or C ranking journals that will give you confidence. Otherwise, you'll sit there for 20 years with no confidence. And that is not helpful at all. Shahrukh Khan bhi banne ka hai. If you want to become Shahrukh Khan, you have to act in serials like Fauji or Circus. And then work through for 20, 25 years to get the stardom. Otherwise, you'd be born to Raj Kapoor's son.
Right.
Okay.
Sushma is there. She has raised her hand, and I have given her access of the mic. So Sushma,
Sushma ma'am, you can please ask your question. We have already given you the mic access. Yes, you are audible. Please ask your question.
Okay, ma'am. It's in continuation with the same question which I asked for. So, first of all, thank you very much, sir, for a wonderful question. And of course, that was a question which I asked in like how to make our space because initially to begin with, as a PhD researcher, of course, I have completed my PhD now. But the thing was, when we had to, we have published two papers, within the stipulated time limit. So at that point of time, we were seriously not able to look in for a good journal as such. So that means, the time frame will they give us, like in the span of 6 months or in the span of 3 years or 4 years, you'll have to have that too. While you have started your research, you need to have two publications. So I believe that will be quite difficult at that point of time, and only after we complete our research, we'll be able to, actually get a hang of which journal is good for us or not.
So what is the question?
That's what, sir. So when we have to begin with a good, with a good journal, initially when we had to write, the abstracts would get knocked off. So how to increase that acceptance in terms of, having uh, no reference to any of the other works which have been made before.
Yeah. Okay. You have to start somewhere, right? That is what your question is. Well, how do you start
Yes,
looking for the journal? The first thing you need to go back to your PhD is look at the reference list. Okay.
yes, sir.
Look at the journals that you have probably referred to the most,
Yes,
because that is the journal which is closest to your field, right? Based on that, you shortlist 2 or 3 journals that you can look at, because those journals know the terrain that you are working with, right? Because they have
correct.
published similar papers in the past that you are drawing your research on, which means when you're writing your paper, you would inadvertently cite those papers, cite those references which are published in those journals, which means the journals also get confidence that you know what that journal is. That's the first thing. Because you're citing the similar kind of papers from that journal, you also know the quality of abstract or the way to write an abstract. So you have to study that, then prepare a manuscript. You all think in India, everybody thinks PhD kar diya to ho gaya. Now it's all ready to publish. No, 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 no. It doesn't work like that. It can
That
be
is
published only if it makes sense. And you have to narrate that story. See, what happens is most of the people that I've seen, they just dump all the data from their PhD or part of the data from the PhD into publication. But where is a story about it? Where is a narrative about that field research? So pick up 1 or 2 aspects from your research or thesis. Look at the journals that you've cited the most. That's the journal you should be publishing in. So look for that journal's ranking, where it stands. Again, don't aim for the topmost right now, because that's not going to help you. You have to build your track records, 1s and 2s runs, and then the 6er. So identify the journals, make a shortlist of 4 or 5 of them. Then look at the aims and objectives of those journals. If they're not in your area of field, then there's no point in applying for them. Because see, if their focus is different and your focus is different, there's no point. So you have to shortlist that. You have to narrow down that search and then say, this is probably the journal that's more suitable for me. And they're more accepting of this kind of research that I'm doing. Many times I've seen people who do qualitative research and then they're submitting a paper to a quantitative based research journal. And they're not going to understand what you're doing qualitatively because that's not their focus. You've not read their aims and objectives. If you want them to accept your paper, you have to do what they want to do. Neither you start your own journal. Okay. So there is a very clear format about it. They say, if you've not read what we are asking for, why should we accept your paper? It's simple. So it's a very step-by-step way to do it, which probably you're not taught in your PhD research because you're constantly focusing only on the content part of it. You're not focusing on the structural organization of this whole research thing. Again, we can talk about this for ages, but one thing you need to understand is your starting point is look at the journals that you have been referring to or whose articles you've been referring to. That's probably the best fit, as we call it. That's the best fit for your kind of work. Because if you didn't have the right kind of that work, why would you refer to them? Simple enough. If you don't want to go to Delhi, why will you buy a ticket to Delhi? You want to go to Delhi, therefore you're buying a ticket to Delhi. That means if your journey has to be to Delhi, you know how to do that journey. That is the expectation. So shortlist journals, at least 3, 4, 5. Look at their aims and objectives. Look at your data. Is your data something that is amenable in that kind of area? Have you done fair amount of literature review from that journal? That helps. And have you read enough abstracts of papers from that journal? Because that will give you the confidence to write something about it. And look at the style of the journal. Okay, I think I'll stop there.
So we have another question. Somebody is asking, for review analysis paper, how many papers do we need to review? Like some minimum
1,000.
number?
1,000. Like, kaise sawal hai yaar? See, understand one thing. It's like this, but I totally understand. I was joking about it. Don't worry. Don't take it so personally. Okay. Whosoever asked that question. But this is a question that gets asked all the time to me. Kitna paper padna chahiye, sir? Bahut padna chahiye. The fact is, think about what is the key concept that you're trying to illustrate in the review paper. And have you covered every aspect of that process that you want to talk about? If you've covered every aspect, that's a good review. As simple as that. Because there is no limit to it. So for example, if you talk about hotel industry, just as an example, problems of large hotels. I'm just cooking up a thing. What are the problems of the large hotels? Have you talked about location? Are there papers that talk about location aspect? Are there papers that talk about the human resource management problem of a large hotel? Are there papers that talk about the environment impact of large scale hotels? Are there papers that talk about how large scale hotels contribute to the growth of tourism in a certain location? So there are all these aspects about large scale hotels. If you've covered most of them that is available from the literature, you've done your job. And you could then say, I wanted to review all of this, but in this particular area, I can't find much literature. And that's a solid review. That's called a review paper where you're simply gone and said, this is the terrain that looks like. That's the review paper. But if you say, nobody's written in this field, how can it be review paper then? That means you have not done enough. Or you're doing only one kind of papers. And therefore you're blinded to the other side of things. And that's okay. But then you set up your review like that, saying that I am going to review this as a tourism scholar. I am not going to review this as an anthropologist or as a policymaker. I am going to review this from a hospitality sector. Again, research design becomes very important. So even in review paper, what is important is you should have a framework to understand and explore. If you don't have that, you will be lost. And therefore the paper cannot be published because they say, "But problem kya hai? What are you trying to tell us?" And you can tell that only if you have a systematic line of argument. Even in a review paper, there is always a line of argument. कहना क्या चाहते हो? What do you want to talk about?
Right, sir. So we have one more question from one of our participants. What are an author's rights if a publisher publishes a rejected academic work without author's consent? Then what can be done?
How can a publisher do that? You should have given them the right. You've submitted the work. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't understand this kind of question.
Very unexpected.
But because unless you have shared your work with someone, how will they publish it?
I think the question is not that clear. So more clarity is required for the from the end of the participants when you're posting questions. We have somebody who is raising the hand. Can Professor Shankar sir, can you please look into it?
I think the same person, ma'am.
No, it's not the same person. It's somebody else.
I have unmuted him. He can speak in the.
Yes, hello.
Yeah, hello,
Yes, you're audible. Please ask
Yes,
your
my
question.
question is the same question. I only asked that question. It's something like once after rejecting my paper, okay, if that particular publisher has published my work without my consent. So later I came to know that that is published in his journal or even after rejecting it. So that time, what are my rights? How to, how can I ask him to, remove it or what? I don't know what is the procedure. Could you please
No, but if
give
they have
me?
rejected, then why would they publish with your name onto it? Is your name there or not?
Yes, actually, thing is like that in the sense once they rejected, and what I did, I just made necessary changes and I did corrections and all things, and I've sent to some other publications, and there also it got published. So
I'm sorry, I don't understand. Either you have to be very clear in saying what you're saying because this is half information. I'm sorry. You can use publisher A, publisher B, journal A, journal B, and your version 1, version 2,
in the
whatever.
sense.
Okay, do we have any other question from any other participant? Because sir has been very patient to go through all the questions and he's answering them all. Do we have any other question?
I think this participant is trying to ask one question is, sir, I think he must have submitted to two different journals. In the first journal, he has submitted one paper. Then he submitted a revised paper to some other journal. I think that is that correct? Is that what you're trying to communicate? Who's the participant? So it got accepted by either one.
I think he's saying that the first one he has rejected and the second publisher has published. So what action he can take against the first publisher who has rejected his paper?
I don't know. I don't understand.
That's why I said, use a clear example. Say journal A, paper version 1,
Yes.
paper version 2, or whatever. Anyways, this is again, you should be talking to your supervisors first if you're publishing anything from your PhD. I think that's the first thing anyone should do is actually seek guidance from their either research office or their supervisor and say, where is this? This is again something that I found a lot happening in India. Everybody wants to become a star sooner than later. They want to skip the processes that we actually go.
Dr. Ananna Mitra, Professor Mukherjee, do we have any other questions?
No, as of now in the chat box, we don't see any more questions, ma'am.
Okay.
No, nothing.
All right. So now may I request Professor Siddharthananda sir to please deliver the vote of thanks.
First of all, thank you so much, sir, Today's topic was very important, and more important was the way you delivered it. You actually expressed it in a more simplest way possible. So all the participants, because no participants are there from different backgrounds, from different states and countries, and you actually give justice to all of them by making it very simple and clear. You focused on how a research proposal should be prepared, how the topic should be chosen, how to not get into this plagiarism, how to have an honest topic, how ethical practices should be followed. And most importantly, which I personally like the most, was not to be in a hurry to publish a paper so they don't, send across 100 publishers and then you find it being rejected. And how do you prepare an interesting abstract, which abstract plays a very important role. Personally, sir, I came across so many international journals. The way they write abstract itself, makes very clear for a reader to understand what the paper is about. And the abstract and referencing is so important to all of us. It also gets accepted in good journals if your abstract is really good and clear. So this is an extremely important aspect which majority of us miss. We ignore the abstract, which is does not get us accepted in good journals. And you also include how references can be done, how review of literature is very, very important for all of us. Thank you once again, sir. And we would like to have individual sessions with you as well on these topics. And I'm sure people, a person like yours, teacher, can give more justice if you gave more time to you with individual aspects. And I'm sure all the participants have learned a lot and will definitely, inculcate this in their research aspects. And also it gives gave a lot of help to all of us, including me. Thank you once again, sir, for again sharing your valuable views. I would like to request our team members if you could have more better sessions, individual sessions with sir in the future. That will really help all of us.
Thank you so much, sir.
All right, sure. Okay.
Thank you.
All the best
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
to all the
Thank you.
participants.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much, sir.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
And thank you all the participants as well for joining for today's session. Over to you, Professor Vandita. Thank you.
Dear participants, please check the chat box. We have already posted the assessment and feedback link. So you are requested to fill that up. The assessment form will double up as your attendance record as well. And we have posted the link in the WhatsApp group also. Certain queries are coming to us. Some of you are mentioning that your names are not there on the list which we have shared along with your participant codes. Now, there has been certain communication which we have already done from our end. We had asked you to get back to us if your name was not there, and you could have got back to us earlier. But anyways, if you're facing such issues, we would request you to please write to us on the mail ID aittfdp2022@gmail.com. Now, one last reminder regarding your assessment cum feedback form. The form shall be active till 5:30 p.m. IST only, so another hour. So please fill it up, and we will record your attendance as well from the same. So thank you so very much, and we look forward to see you tomorrow sharp at 2:30 p.m. So tomorrow we have two guests, Mr. Srilal Mithapala, Dr. Gul Erkol Beram. They will be joining us for two separate sessions, one at 2:30 and the other at 3:30. So see you tomorrow. Thank you.